Pakistan clearly still continues to make these invidious distinctions between good Taliban and bad Taliban. At some point of time, the good Taliban is the bad Taliban. At some point of time, the bad Taliban becomes the good Taliban.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. On the gist today, we are discussing the situation in the AFPAC region. AFPAC is not back in fashion as it was, say, 4 years ago, but it is creating a lot of traction in strategic circles and military circles because of the developments on the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And on the other hand, India's recent moves to engage the Taliban at a higher level. All that is something up for discussion, and with me are familiar faces elsewhere and also on StratNews Global. To my left, R. Kumar, also a former intelligence officer, analyst, writer, who's watched the region very closely for decades. And on my right, Shalini Chawla, distinguished fellow at the Center for Air Power Studies, a think tank primarily for the Indian Air Force, but someone who watches this space very closely again and analyzes it. So welcome both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me start with you, Kumar. The Pakistan military establishment's analysis of the situation would be that what went wrong in 3 years or less than, maybe 3.5 years, because in August 2021 when the Taliban regained control of Afghanistan, I think Pakistan was gloating that they are back there and the strategic depth has been obtained as they were looking for it for a long time. India has been ousted. But the tables seem to have turned. What has happened and why is the situation what it is now on that, in that region?
Well, it is in some ways a rather long and complicated story. But to put it in a nutshell, Pakistan's duplicitous policies of running with the hare and hunting with the hound, they have now come back to bite them in a big way. And you're right, it has started ever since the Taliban were brought back to power by Pakistan covertly, trying to pull wool over the eyes of the US and the international community. And they did succeed in large measure in having their supposed clients back in power in Afghanistan. But certainly this is not the result that they had been expecting. Let us not forget that there are deep-rooted or deep-seated ideological affiliations between the Afghan Taliban and the TTP. And the TTP clearly wants to do inside Pakistan what the Afghan Taliban have done in Afghanistan.
Sure.
So they have in fact been emboldened by the success of the Taliban in Afghanistan, and they want to now recreate a so-called Islamic caliphate or a Sharia-ruled Pakistan, which I think is sort of not palatable to the Pakistan Army.
Sure.
So, as you said, the Pakistan establishment's objective all along was to make sure that they eliminate all traces of Indian influence in Afghanistan. But instead of that, they have suicide terrorism in a big way in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and in Balochistan, etc. So yes, they are in a very difficult spot. They will of course blame everybody except themselves for the situation that they are in, but they are now sort of reaping the whirlwind which they sowed in the first place.
Absolutely right. As someone who analyzes this region so closely and watches it absolutely objectively, don't you, do you think that the Pakistani army did not anticipate this kind of a trouble? They never wargamed this possibility that TTP and Taliban could get together or have the same, kind of objective the TTP would have inside Pakistan to gain what the Taliban gained in Afghanistan, they were so naive not to have anticipated this?
So at the time of US withdrawal and that whole phase of Doha talks that we saw, Pakistan was completely focused on the US withdrawal. They were completely focused on the fact that Taliban should come into power. That was their focus. I don't think there was any thought process on the TTP. Although TTP was very entrenched with the Taliban in fighting the foreign forces and also the Afghan forces, but that was something and we also had the anti-India groups which joined, exactly. And that's one of the reasons why Afghan Taliban don't want to put any pressure on TTP, because they treat them as so-called guests under this Pashtunwali culture that we have, and also kind of they want to return that favor by not questioning them. Pakistan military was very focused that Taliban comes into power and their strategic objectives, which are controlling the Pashtun nationalism, having India out of Afghanistan, and also some kind of control on the Durand line on their terms and conditions will be there. None of the strategic objectives were achieved, and then you have the TTP, which was significantly emboldened. So I think Pakistan military had this understanding, which was very one-sided, that Taliban will be under their complete control and they will control the TTP, but obviously that did not happen. And Taliban, if you see this phase of Taliban, is extremely assertive. It's not the Taliban of the 1990s, which was so dependent on Pakistan. This is the Taliban which is asserting, it is using social media, it wants its voice to be heard, and also what you see a difference here in this phase, which is called the Taliban 2.0, is that you have the regional powers which are very seriously also engaging with the Taliban, Russia, China, because all of them have their vested interest in terms of catering to their security requirements, which is the ISKP and other militant groups. So Taliban is, I think, much more assertive. And it's not only the TTP. None of Pakistan's objectives have come true. Durand line, they did not want the fence. The Pashtun nationalism has grown tremendously. So I think it was more like an expectation from the Pakistan military that this will happen. But there was no agreement. And also, what we saw in that period, there was PTI government started negotiating with the TTP. There was also release of the TTP prisoners at that time. That has also added to the intense posture that we see, an aggravated posture of TTP. That also kind of contributed in the whole positioning of the TTP that we see now. So yes, to your question, they did not anticipate the blowback, which they never anticipate, incidentally. The blowback has been there in the whole history of Pakistan, but there never seems to be a realization.
They never learn their lessons, clearly. So talking about learning lessons, like she mentioned about the PTI government or Imran Khan government being cozy with the TTP and probably, TTP got emboldened because of that. But clearly the Pakistani army did not have enough levers of control or influence over the current Taliban, which is much more aware of geopolitics, it seems, from their actions and their behavior. Is it that the Pakistani army is still, and since you study Pakistani army quite closely, is it still sort of fixated on the old world kind of geopolitics, that they continue to project their requirement to the Americans, to the Chinese, that we have to take care of this because we are geographically located, you must keep helping us and we will take care of Afghanistan, or they haven't really understood the new realities? Is that something that you are aware of, or what do you think?
Yes, one would think so, that the game has got far more complicated than the Pakistan army ever imagined. Now, the dilemma that they had is, or they still have, is how to tackle this problem. Yes, you can go running to your international partners. The Americans, once they got out of Afghanistan, they've rapidly lost interest in Afghanistan and Pakistan. The American dollars are no longer coming. China has its own objectives, its own interests. They are furious that their interests are being attacked. They are putting pressure on the Pakistanis to sort these people out. In all this, Pakistan's dilemma is, do we use the carrot or the stick? And clearly, as Shalini mentioned, during the Imran Khan government, he was in favor of the softer approach, which, now that approach comes in for criticism, that it emboldened these people. Absolutely. The TTP came back, and then they've now made this, they made a huge comeback. So clearly, after, General Asim Munir took over as Chief of Army Staff, they have now tried the harsher approach. And he clearly seems to be in favor of adopting, the stick. Yeah. But the stick has also not worked. So neither of these approaches is working. And the root of all this, at the risk of repetition, I would say, is Pakistan clearly still continues to make these invidious distinctions between good Taliban and bad Taliban. At some point of time, the good Taliban is the bad Taliban. At some point of time, the bad Taliban becomes the good Taliban. So there is a great deal of incoherence in Pakistan's strategies, which are becoming more and more glaring by the day. And, that is not a recipe for solving the problem. The TTP will have to be made, to use another expression, to wither away. But it requires multiple prongs. It requires, yes, a bit of the stick, a bit of the carrot, but above all, it requires sincerity of purpose, which I think one doesn't see so far from Pakistan. And I think that really is the root of the problem.
Is the crux of the issue, absolutely. Taking off from what he said, so is Pakistan left with any friends anymore internationally? Going by what we are seeing, the Chinese are furious, the Americans are not interested, or half-hearted they are about what's happening in that region. So does this give advantage to the Taliban? Because the Taliban government in Afghanistan, whatever it is, seems to be more savvy and more, their outgoing or their outreach is far better than the Pakistanis now, it seems. How would you describe the current situation?
So there are two aspects to what encouraged Taliban. One is obviously the fact, the way Taliban has positioned itself. The second part has been continued instability in Pakistan, and instability on all fronts. We had the whole political, challenges with Imran Khan, and even now what we saw, the protests happening. Then the economy has been in shambles, where the growth rate went down into negatives. The huge debt that Pakistan is facing, which kind of increases their reliance on the external sources, which obviously challenges your ability to assert, and also in some way challenged its ability to conduct operations for some time, is my belief. Okay. Because they were so reliant on the IMF loan, they were looking for a fresh loan, so you cannot be going through the military operations if you need that. This is one part. Has Pakistan left with some friends? I think obviously China remains a very deep ally. There are reports on the fact that Chinese are angry because some of the Chinese workers have been killed by the TTP. That is there. China has raised their concern for the first time very openly. They have been asking their own security forces to be in Pakistan, to be able to protect their own nationals, which Pakistan is not very keen on. But I think this is not going to dent the bottom line of that relationship, because that alliance is too deep to be dented by this, and that alliance is, by and large, a very significant part of that alliance is based on their common hostility towards India. So that stays, because the bottom line objectives of that alliance stay. And then you have the other part of the US. Yes, the relationship was completely, I would say, went down the drain with Imran Khan's position, how he took a position that they are responsible for getting out. Pakistan is working very hard. US, I feel, wants to adopt a kind of neutral stance there, and they will keep Pakistan warm, is my assessment. Because in a counter-terror operation, they realize the importance of Pakistan. And Zawahiri operation to an extent also shows us that. So the relationship is not on the security dynamics in the relationship is not there. But if you see actually the data, the non-security dynamics are there. The cooperation between the two on the other aspect. Although Pakistan is very keen on reviving the security dynamics, and the points I think was made that they keep on highlighting so that they get this assistance there. So that struggle will go on, and Pakistan is trying very hard. And then you have, Saudi Arabia and UAE, which I think the relationship has improved because of the Sharifs. They have a very good relationship, Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia has been a big contributor in terms of stabilizing the economic situation.
Yes.
So they have friends, but the position that Pakistan cherished for decades, that it's too dangerous a state to fail, that it has not managed to revive, I would say.
Very well put, and I think I need to take a break at this point. When we come back, we will discuss India's growing outreach to the Taliban and implications for the region and how others see this approach adopted by India in the new year. Don't go away. Welcome back. I am in conversation with R. Kumar and Shalini Chawla on the situation in the AFPAC region and as well as the Indian engagement with Taliban, which has got ramped up suddenly this week with India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri meeting the acting Foreign Minister of Taliban-led Afghanistan in Dubai. And so therefore, in this segment, we want to concentrate on what are these implications, what are the implications going to be, and why is India engaging with Taliban government in Afghanistan without recognizing it as it were formally. So let me begin with you. The Taliban of the old, the Taliban 1.0 to take her term on the current 2.0, India seemed to have missed the boat that time, and there were a lot of discussions around this. So is India's current strategy to selectively and incrementally engage with the Taliban driven by that experience, or you think the real geopolitics today drives that approach?
Well, I think we've had a very measured and calibrated approach, which is exactly what it should be. For us, we've had to strike a fine balance between our security considerations and the the humanitarian aspect, the development work that we were doing with Afghanistan or in Afghanistan. Now, these security concerns are very real. Our interests have been attacked in Afghanistan. We've had, reference was, there was a mention of the ISKP. That has been a very major concern for us. As you know, people from, our country, some of them tried to go there when the caliphate in Syria was set up and ISKP, the Khorasan branch was formed. We also had a case where, the celebrated, or the infamous, I should say, the Abbey Gate bomber, the suicide bomber who carried out the attack on Kabul airport when the Americans withdrew. It was a catastrophic attack.
Sure.
In fact, there's a background. The suicide bomber had actually been sent to India to set up a cell here. Fortunately, that was detected in time, and then the person concerned was sent back to Afghanistan, and he was in prison there till the Taliban, in a fit of whatever mistaken generosity, misplaced generosity, released all these people when they swept to power, and then he carried out the attack. So we've had our security concerns, and also the Lashkar and the Jaish given half a chance. They have set up their infrastructure in the past during Taliban 1.0, and given half a chance they would do it again. Sure. So we've had very serious security concerns, which is why we scaled down our presence there. We withdrew our personnel, etc. But then these things have to evolve with the ground realities, and it's now what, 3 years plus. So we watched the situation incrementally, and we've tailored our response accordingly. And I think possibly the time is coming where we can resume some of our development activities there. And also we've started issuing visas for medical visas in a small way. So we are doing these things gradually and incrementally, is how I would look at it.
Very well calibrated, I would think, well thought out. But another consideration could be, and please give me your assessment on this. India would also be looking at who's engaging with Taliban and at what level and at what kind of deeper understanding. So it would be China, Russia, of course, and Pakistan's influence may have waned, but you never know what changes. So would all these geopolitical considerations also weigh in on India's calibrated approach?
I think India's approach, you are right, geopolitical considerations do weigh in any international approach for any country. But I think there are a couple of factors, some of them obviously Mr. Kumar mentioned very beautifully. Our engagement right now there is also due to the fact that in 1990s we did not have the engagement of that level. In 20 years, 2 decades, we have been very deeply engaged in terms of building the infrastructure, in terms of our commitment for the Afghans, because we had the whole opportunity and the ground to do that. And Afghanistan being a very, having been shared a very, historically we've shared very good relationship. So we got the ground there, and we did invest a lot. So one important consideration is that how can you just let that go waste? That's a practical consideration. Second part is that we do have this commitment towards the Afghans, and I think our engagement is just a continuation of that commitment, and we have realized that commitment we cannot go ahead without engaging with the Taliban. And the third part, which is very critical, which was mentioned by Mr. Kumar, that very importantly our security concerns, which play a very important role in our engagement there. Because in the past we have seen the Afghan soil which is used by the anti-India forces, and we would not want that repetition to be there. ISKP and also deny space for any anti-India organization. And then yes, if you see India now, India's stature, its economic growth, it has more capability to kind of have that influence. So there is a combination of factor which leads to this engagement here.
Which is I think the way to go, as he mentioned. One final thought from you on China's desire to engage more closely with the Taliban in Afghanistan right now. How deep do you think it is, and why is it? Is it driven by its quest for raw materials, minerals, or also keep India's influence limited there? Will it be driven by that? Just talking about China.
Well, from the security point of view, or let me say, there is of course an economic angle to it. The the copper mines, the resources, etc. in Afghanistan, and clearly China would like to have a piece of the pie there as well. But just on core security issues, I will sort of restrict myself to that. Well, don't forget Xinjiang, and that is a very important security consideration, the Uyghurs for China. They would above all want to make sure that that Afghan soil, again in their case also, is not used to destabilize Xinjiang and the TIP and even ISKP. Sure. They have made no secret of the fact that they consider China to be an enemy, and they are sort of China's treatment of the Uyghur Muslims is deeply objectionable from their point of view. So China's engagement with the Taliban in partly also is to ensure that, to deny space to anti-China groups to operate from Afghanistan. And there they in fact see the Taliban as being, in a sense, almost paradoxically being a factor of stability vis-a-vis, say, groups like the ISKP, the Turkestan, the ETIM, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I think security considerations always are predominant in any country's foreign policy approach, especially in this region, AFPAC region. Final word from you, Shalini. India's one of our teams had gone to Afghanistan, to Kabul especially, after the Taliban took over, so 2 years ago. And even then, the Taliban officials at the highest level, whoever we could meet, my colleague Amitabh Revi was there, they emphasized the point that we have no enmity with India and we have no role to play. We don't desire a role in Kashmir or the jihad that Pakistan wants to play in Jammu and Kashmir. So clearly they have kept their word. But should India now ramp up this engagement higher, or it should just keep sort of looking at how things are going and then slowly up the ante, as it were?
I think we should go slow. Okay. We should go slow. We should continue our engagement because we definitely, Afghanistan is in need of assistance and our commitment for Afghan state. So we should continue to, our humanitarian assistance, our developmental assistance. They are saying that it's going to be revived. I don't know what are the timelines, what we are looking at. But I think up till now we have followed just the right approach. We are actually giving it time. We are thinking through it fully and then moving ahead. And so we should continue with that. And also the second part, which India has attempted a couple of times, is kind of trying for a multilateral kind of a regional approach to solve issues in Afghanistan, where we tried to bring Central Asia together. So that approach parallelly, I think, should go, because Afghanistan needs a regional approach. Right. Because the problems that will emanate and are emanating are impacting the region. Exactly. So, but unfortunately, the regional issues, the challenges, India, Pakistan, then China, India, these kind of have not allowed the regional approach, and we don't even have a regional body functioning to address this. Yeah. But I think on these two fronts, India's efforts should go on a thoughtful, slow process.
So on that note, I must end this program. We have run out of time completely. But as you see, we have now two guests coming to our program and giving their views. Do keep watching StratNews Global. You know where to reach us. Do follow our handles. And of course, your comments are valuable, as we keep saying, because from there, we get ideas about what we should be discussing and what we should offer to our valuable viewers. Keep watching StratNews Global. I'm Nitin Gokhale.